respond.
In the end, after all the partying and the money and all the amazing things he did with Big Meech, what did this guy do? He snitched. He gave it all up to the feds because he was stupid and he was weak. And the Flannery brothers' 20-year run was over. Just like that.
You already know the fuck I'm here.
Are you familiar with BMF? I heard about BMF back in '99. They weren't called BMF then. In 1999, who do you know as members of BMF? I only knew Meech and Blue Da Vinci. When did you become a part of BMF? In 2002. How did you obtain? I would call J-Bo and then I would go and pick it up. Who would be there when you arrived? J-Bo. Who was J-Bo? He works for Dude. Who was Dude? Dude is Meech. Who was responsible for all the drugs? Meech. That was the tape-recorded statement of Mr. Omari O-Dog McCree, one of the stars of the BMF DVDs. Here's footage of him recorded during BMF's marketing campaign for Blue Da Vinci.
You already know the fuck I'm here.
And unlike a lot of people that were seen in the clubs and in the party footage, who weren't really selling much, some weren't. O-Dog was one of the ones who was. He was a native Atlanta guy from a neighborhood called Boulevard, and he was running through bricks 10 at a time, which adds up. I mean, you get 10 bricks 3 times a week. It's 120 a month. That makes you a kingpin right there. That's how big BMF was. That just this kind of ancillary seeming guy was enough to give the feds an inside scoop. At the time he made his statements to the police, when he made that tape recording, and of course a lot more information, it was '04. The walls were already closing in, but a lot of the information about Big Meech in Atlanta and stuff that BMF was doing was kind of piecemeal. It was like the feds knew, but they didn't know. You still have to have someone on the inside to give real information about names, dates, locations, exact amounts. And of course, once the indictments came out, plenty of people told. But as far as making the case, O-Dog and William Doc Marshall were very, very integral to the indictments actually coming down. But how did O-Dog even get on the radar, and how did he find himself going from the star of a DVD to the star of making statements? Well, it all started back in September 14th of '04. The Pittsburgh neighborhood of Atlanta, which is just outside of downtown, is where the Mercedes-Benz Stadium is, a rough area. Used to have a lot of drug activity. Might be gentrifying now, but there's probably still activities going on. And federal agents have a wiretap up on a guy named Raphael Smurf Allison. He sold a couple of ounces a day consistently, and the feds had been on him since '01. And in July of '04, they'd gotten a CI to buy a few ounces of hard from him on several occasions. Now, they weren't tripping on him so much. These particular feds were part of the HIDTA, High Intensity Drug Trafficking Area Task Force. That's when the federal government sends, say, ATF, DEA, FBI, and they give them overtime and they give them money to pay local police, like Atlanta police, to help make cases. And they're not necessarily targeting anybody in particular. They just try to figure out what's going on. And Smurf was a guy who sold a couple ounces a day. Well, that adds up, and you figure he must know somebody who's getting kilos, so they put a wiretap on Smurf. Smurf makes a call to try to fulfill the order of the confidential informant, and the guy who's going to serve him pulls up at a gas station on Ponce de Leon. He gives Smurf a bag, and they run the plates on the car, and eventually they follow Smurf over to this guy's house, and the guy whose car it is and whose apartment, and the guy Smurf's copping from is named DeCarlo Hoskins. But before we get into him, a quick aside on Smurf. Now, I have a theory that there's all these boy pussies nowadays, these males who, it's not just that they enjoy the company of the same gender, that's whatever. But why do they act like female crackhead prostitutes? Well, because so many of the 20-some-year-olds now, that's who they grew up around. Their mother and their aunts, female crackhead, mouth-selling selves. And guys like Smurf Allison were predators in that environment. Smurf went to prison in 2004 right after these buys, and he has several cocaine charges, but he also, as you see, has this charge involving kids. So he probably took advantage of these situations with unattended children and crackhead mothers who were not paying attention, or maybe knowingly letting things happen. I don't know the details of Smurf's case, but as you can see, time hasn't been kind to him. This is what he went to prison for. That was his main charge. And in 2020, he got a big METH charge. I think that he might have been a part of some ring within prison, but I'm not sure. Or he got out and immediately caught that case. So this small-time dealer, who was a chomo, as they call it, he leads to DeCarlo Hoskins. DeCarlo Hoskins wasn't in BMF, but he knew who guy was. Old Dog. So when they eventually hit DeCarlo Hoskins was making enough money. He had $100,000 stashed at his mother's house. He had a nice car for his girlfriend. They had a nice, expensive apartment on the west side of Atlanta. The feds used the information of witnessing Smurf make a buy from DeCarlo to get a wiretap up on DeCarlo. They hear DeCarlo talking to some out-of-town people. These guys are coming in on a Sunday. They want to cop something and then go see a football game at the Georgia Dome. So the high-intensity drug trafficking people are staked out around them. They make exchange of packages. I don't know why the police didn't break the thing up. I guess they were keep trying to find more people involved, but they let the deal go down. They follow DeCarlo Hoskins' customers. They call DeCarlo and say, we're being followed, we're going to try to flee. But when the police pull their Altima over on Northside Drive, for those of you from Atlanta, they don't flee. The police see 357 in the car and pull them out.
Convicted of running a huge criminal enterprise stretching from Atlanta to Detroit and several other states. The story of Big Meech, who headed up the Black Mafia family, is also the source of a popular TV show that has been filmed right here in Atlanta. And this week, after serving nearly 20 years in prison for racketeering, drug dealing, and running a criminal enterprise, he is out of prison.
Lined up against the wall, guns in your face, a $3 million bill is due, and your partner is in the wind. Oh, and your partner is your brother. Now, is this why Big Meech and Southwest T fell out? Now, Blue Da Vinci recently was telling a story along these lines, and I might have heard a rumor about this some time ago, perhaps.
He got this complex, like, he feel like, I don't know if he trying to be the older brother, something he could never be, but what?
We pick up our story in the mid to late 90s. The exact place, I think, was Gardena, California, a solid suburb next to Compton, where Big Meech had his first California HQ. This is where Bull and Blue met Big Meech by selling them high-grade Cali Chronic. One day, the Mexicans arrive unexpectedly at the trap. And not the nice Mexicans, not the ones who drop off the bag. These are the ones who barely speak Spanish, much less English. They just want the paper. They tell Meech that his brother Terry is gone, and so is the work they jointly took on consignment. But the ticket is still due and owing in full. But T and his crew are gone. The Mexicans can't find him, and now they're holding Meech's side responsible. Blue Da Vinci in a recent interview referenced the Mexican mafia putting guns to their head, but I'm sure he meant the guys from south of the border, if you catch my drift. Now, the Flannery brothers were still a team at this point, but with Terry, and remember this is one side of the story, of course, gone, The $3 million, according to Blue Da Vinci, had to be paid, or bodies were going to start dropping right then and there. Once again, Demetrius Big Meech Flannery used his most valuable trait, his verbal skills. He was able to save everybody by convincing the bill collectors to put the guns down, and he would work the tab off. And slowly but surely he did. So, if you owe X dollars per brick, you just turn in a couple extra thousand for each brick, and, after you sell 300, 400, 500 of them, you pay off $1 million tab. So, to pay off a $3 million tab, maybe they had to sell 1,000 or 1,500 extra bricks they didn't make any money off of, but they could have did that in a month or two. There's another situation that Big Meech had to be upset about with his brother.
He would take 100 bricks and make an extra 20 bricks out of it. He got to break everything down, repress it, put it back together. I never done that. He done went and bought the work with my money and his money, and then he repressing my brick.
Terry was copping for both of them when Meech was down south, and Terry was taking the bricks and taking 200 grams out of each one before he passed them on. So we buy 500 bricks. Meech got 250 coming. He's gonna take 250 times 200. So if Meech has 250 bricks coming, Terry's gonna cut out 50 free bricks for himself. According to the federal indictment, Southwest T was possibly talking about putting a hit out on Big Meech for making all of them hot with his BMF billboards and his antics in Atlanta, but it was T who's all over the wiretaps.
They're the leaders of the Black Mafia family, and they're from Southwest Detroit. Right now, Demetrius Flannery is in federal lockup, asking for his freedom because of the dangers of COVID-19, and his brother, Terry Flannery, is being freed because of the virus. This is the post on Instagram from Curtis 50 Cent Jackson saying Black Mafia boss Southwest T is out. Take your time getting to the bank. No hurry, just have what you owe him by Monday. 50 Cent has been promoting an 8-episode series on the Black Mafia family that he's writing for Stars. It will tell the story of two brothers from Detroit who built a drug empire, then tried to turn it into a legitimate hip-hop business, promoting stars such as Young Jeezy.
And maybe the Flannery brothers who once cast a spell, not just on the streets of a city or a state, but on the whole country, are just making sure we're entertained by the greatest show on earth.